Hello and welcome to the KE Report. I'm your host, Shad Markwitz, and I'm speaking today with Shane Williams, CEO and President of West Red Lake Gold Mines. West Red Lake Gold Mines is traded on the TSX.V under the ticker WRLG and on the OTCQB under the ticker WRLGF. And Shane, it's great to get you on the show again for an update. I feel like we just talked to Will a couple weeks ago about some exploration targets, and yet your company continues to put out more and more news. We got an exciting one to talk about today, and that's the news you just put out, and it's about the Madsen mill cleanup. Just as a reminder for people listening, you really have two projects, the Madsen Gold Mine and Project, where you've got a number of exploration targets, but also a brownfields mine site that you're looking to put back into production. And you also have the somewhat near Rowan property that you've been doing a lot of exploration work on, and we will get to that later. But at the Madsen Gold Mine, you found a way to, as you're cleaning up the mill, find a lot of different pockets of gold that had been trapped there due to the equipment, the way it was installed. And I think this is just an interesting value driver for the company right now while we've got high gold prices. So it all lines up to a pretty interesting story. Why don't you walk us through what's going on with the Madsen mill cleanup?
Yeah, it's a pretty unique story. I mean, it's a bit different, but it's pretty cool actually. Look, one of the challenges of the previous operator was there was a few differences between reconciliation between the mine and the mill and the right numbers. And normally that's pretty honed in when you're running an underground mine. But there was a couple of challenges around that. And so, in new mills, it's very rare that you have kind of build up in gold. But when I went in early days with the team, this was way back just after we bought it. We did an initial cleanup because you can get gold trapped around the tanks and the leach tanks and everything. And so we got quite a bit of gold. And that stage we got around 750,000 Canadian dollars of gold. And then I started to look around the rest of the mill. And we looked at the mills. And so mills have liners inside them, which are lined with that to move crush up the rock and grind up the rock. And normally, look, in old mills, it's quite old mills that have been around a long, long time. It's always very profitable to clean those out because gold gets trapped everywhere. Gold gets trapped in, these are fine particles of gold now in the dust and in the mill and the material that builds up. Gold tends to get trapped in that. So normally when the old mills, they do that. But when we looked at this mill, I was very surprised to see a lot of gold. Normally, it's a brand new mill. You shouldn't see as much gold in there, but I was very surprised to see as much gold. So we went about getting a team that does this as a profession around Canada. And so they clean up these mills, and we got that team in, and they looked at it, and they were very impressed by the potential quality of the gold. And then we put them to work basically and pulling out all the liners and cleaning them off and getting out all the gold. And, it's been pretty surprising how much gold is potentially there compared to what should be there. Because this is a pretty much new mill, Chad. I mean, it's brand new. It was only put in 2 years ago. So it shouldn't really be the case. So when we started to investigate even more, we found that there was the equipment in the mill, the liners, etc., were kind of put in incorrectly a little bit. And so that causes these traps of gold effectively in them. And that's really what happened. And, it's great to get the gold, as I said to you earlier. Now with gold prices there, it's a great upside to us. But more importantly for me is we understand the problem. A lot of people, we could have gone back and started the mill up again and, everything would have been the same. But by going through this process of technical understanding, we kind of really understand the problem, and we can correct that as we start in. And the upside is we get non-dilutive financing effectively, besides going out and raising the money. So it's a lot of benefits for us.
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword there, a triple-edged sword. You've got the extra gold that you weren't expecting that brings in a little revenue to the company. You better understand the process technically now after going through and cleaning it up. And it also addresses the grade reconciliation versus the recoveries that the prior operator was seeing. And so it should give the market a little more confidence that when you guys do get this back into production, you're going to have better recovery rates because you'll have addressed those issues. It brings up a good point, Shane. I wouldn't mind you just spending just a quick minute and just sharing with people that you have put mines into production before and your team has. So when you look at this project, unlike an exploration and development team trying to go into production, your team has been producers before. So maybe just speak to your background doing operations with gold.
Yeah, so Prior to this, I was with a company called Skeena Resources, which is more a developer. But my main background has been with a company called Eldorado Gold, who some of your listeners will know, which is a big mid-tier producer in Canada, has mines all over the world. And so, I spent 9 years with them working all over the world, building and operating mines, gold mines in particular. And some of those were underground open pits. I worked in Greece. I worked in Turkey. They have big operations in Turkey. I worked in the Lamaque project in Val d'Or. So my background is really rooted in project development and operations and understanding the whole mine and the operations. And we've put together a very good board who some of your listeners will recognize. We have people who seriously built gold mining companies. Tony McCooch is on the board, and he built Kirkland Lake, which became a monster of a company and was bought out recently last year by Agnico Eagle. We have Duncan Middlemass, who's also with Wesdome Mining. So I think we have a unique combination of a strong board who know how to build and operate mines to support the team. We have a young team who are all experienced operators and worked in big companies who ran gold mines and ran companies. And then we have an excellent asset. And of course, we have the backing of Frank Justra, which always helps. As your listeners will know, Frank has built some very, very successful companies. So I think that approach really has helped us uncover this issue. We're very technically focused as a team to try and understand the technical challenges that the previous operator had. And by eliminating them, investigating and eliminating one at a time, we're trying to really uncover that sort of value or that loss of value or what happened to them. And that's been a pretty good process that we've managed to do. So that's important for your listeners to show the de-risking as we go forward.
Yeah, and I think some of the de-risking you're doing is coming from all that experience and bench of knowledge of the team that you just highlighted. So it gives you a leg up, and it also should give people listening some confidence that this team does know what they're doing to bring this asset back into production, because it did have challenges initially. But the other thing that you saw, and you were pretty upfront with us, I think over a year ago when we first started talking, Shane, that the initial plan was to also do some exploration, get underground, do some drilling, and just find out what areas you ever want to be mining. You have laid out your exploration strategy for 2024. And I know that when we talked with Will last time, he was outlining just the success you were having in the South Austin zone, but you've also been drilling the North Austin zone in Austin. There's plans to get in there and drill the 8 zone, kind of at a deeper area. So maybe just walk us through the exploration strategy at Madsen first, and then we'll get into Rowan next.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of success drilling in underground, and we have 2 rigs there. We had 1 rig, we ramped up recently to 2 rigs. We will be adding another rig, so really ramping up underground. And this is more definition drilling. There's a little bit of exploration going on. This is more definition, very tightly spaced drilling. Again, part of the challenge of the previous operator was this lack of understanding of these type of ore bodies. So we've really hit that hard, and we're going to do about 50,000 meters of underground drilling. This is very, very tightly spaced defined drilling to really understand that ore body. And if you go back, remember, this mine was in production. So they had enough experience, or they thought they drilled enough to put this into production. So we're stepping back even further and doing another 50,000 meters. So there's a huge amount of drilling will be done to de-risk this ore body. And also part of what Will talked about probably is we have a large land package across the whole package we picked up. And there's been very little exploration done across there. So part of our regional strategy this year is to do some early grassroots exploration across the whole property and understand where there's good drill targets and potentially satellite. We know there is a lot of potential on the property for satellite deposits, which build on that strategy of this hub and spoke model, where Madsen would be the base, but we'd be able to bring in ore from other deposits around there. So it's pretty exciting. This is our early stage at Madsen, but the team are very excited. There's some really good opportunities there. I don't know if your listeners remember, but the Great Bear story was one that was found in not far from down Red Lake region, and it was a great success. Great Bear was, and we have some potential areas that the rocks are very similar, the showings are very similar, so that might be a very exciting story as we move into the back half of this year and into next year, for sure.
Well, let's dig into that idea a little bit more, Shane. just because there's that Confederation assembly of rocks that Great Bear drilled, and it changed the way people understood some of the geology and where some of the gold would be trapped. And you guys have that same kind of Confederation assembly of rock package on your land, along with the other package of geology that you've been exploring. So maybe just explain how that could be a analog to the Great Bear.
Yeah. Uniquely on a geological perspective, the majority of the deposits in Red Lake have been found in what's called the Bomber Rock Package. And all the mines historically were, and all the regional exploration was done in this rock package. And everybody thought that there is another package called a Confederation package. And everybody thought that, no, there's nothing there. It's all in the Bomber. It's all in the Bomber. And actually, it was Great Bear Resources, who had a great run, who actually went into the Confederation package and drilled in this package. And lo and behold, they found a lot of gold in this area. And that really changed the understanding of the Red Lake region. Not only is there the gold potential in the Bomber package, but also in the Confederation package. And the one really exciting thing about our property is actually we have both packages side by side on our property, actually split down the middle. And so that allows us to, look, target where the Austin and the South Austin is mainly in the Bomber package, but we have the Confederation package. And, we've seen some very, very exciting showings in there and potentials like Great Bear. So in reality, we have like two things going on. We have a Red Lake sort of regional, typical Red Lake sort of high grade underground. And we have another this package, which potentially could be with further drilling like Great Bear. So we really have to, that would be very exciting because people will be able to link that story to Great Bear. And so that's kind of a very exciting story. And, we're early at that. We need to do early stage exploration. But into next year, we would be potentially drilling some of those targets. And we know there's targets there. There was some drill holes put in there. So this is not, we know that there's the early stage drilling and there's some good hits. So it's not like it's just green field, very green field. We know that it's there. The old timers in the mine started to drift out to some of these showings. So, there's a lot of potential there. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, it is. So not only do you have the potential at depth with things like the 8 zone or South Austin and all of the action there, but you also have this regional discovery drilling that you'll be doing and possibly on both rock packages. So a lot of work to do on the exploration and drill front still on this property, but also you are drilling the Rowan property. And this is a property we've talked about in the past, but it hasn't had a lot of exploration work, let's say in the last 2 or 3 decades, but your team did a lot of drilling there last year. We are going to get to the resource that you just updated there, but first let's just look at what is the exploration strategy at Rowan for this year?
Yeah, the exploration strategy, it's kind of twofold. As you said, there hasn't really been a lot of drilling on that property. Last year, we were really the first operator who did a lot of drilling on that area. And really last year was just to define that ore body and really understand it a lot better. And so that has led to obviously the resource update we've just done. But really, also there are a number of this area historically had a number of historical mines across the Rowan property. And, these are very small mines back in those days. They weren't very deep, but they produced a lot of gold. So really, we're going to go back into those areas with some regional exploration and put some holes and understand these areas as well, which haven't been drilled since the 30s, really. So, as you well know, the best place to find gold is near a gold mine or under a head frame. So this gives us the opportunity to look for these areas. And most of the systems in Red Lake, as your listeners might know, they go very deep. They're very high grade and they go very deep. So these miners went in the 30s and 40s. They mined down a certain level, but the technology wasn't there. We know the gold goes deeper. So by us drilling in here, it's another exciting part of the story that we can grow Rowan over time.
Well, and I would argue you just did grow, Rowan, because you just put out your mineral resource update there, and this was just on April 26th. I won't steal your thunder, Shane, but you've already got a resource growing there. Walk us through some of the key metrics at Rowan.
Yeah, Rowan is developing into a very, remember the big strategy with Rowan, and for your listeners, is this will always be a satellite mine to Madsen. Because we bought Madsen fairly cheap, we have all the infrastructure, we have the tailings, we have permits. So there's a lot of satellite deposits, around the Red Lake region, and Rowan is one of them. So, the focus of this is Madsen will be the main mine, which is averaging around 7 grams. But with the resource update we've just done, we've been a bit conservative and we've targeted Rowan. And you can see the average grade in the indicated level is around 12 grams. And that's a very high grade ore body, typical for Red Lake. But that opens up the possibility of bringing that ore into the Madsen mill and really sweeten. If you average the two grades, you're getting a very high grade operation over time. And that's what's exciting about Rowan. It's more focused on, rather than big scale, big scale, it's more focused on, as a sweetener, as a feed to the Madsen mill, which will bring up the overall grade. So that's why we're really excited about Rowan and the potential as we drill Rowan this year to grow that into a bigger resource at those high grades.
Well, and Shane, maybe just one last question just to tie this all together. So your team has big exploration plans at both projects this year. And as you say, Rowan will kind of just be the sweetener for the Madsen gold mine. A lot of people have been watching the story really since inception to see what the timeline would be for moving it towards a development and production decision. At this point, you've been on the ground for, let's just say, about a year now. Do you think you got about a year left of all of this exploration before it all ties together into a development strategy, or could you lay out a little bit more of a timeline for folks listening in?
Yeah, I think as we move now, as you say, we're about a year on the ground. We have a good understanding of the project, sort of the scale, what we want to do. That's taken a bit. We've just kicked off a pre-feasibility study. And I think this is a really important document that will kind of lay out how we're going to restart, what's the plans, the mining method, etc. We've done all this drilling and we've got resources. We've got some of these new areas. So we really need to tie it all together in a mine plan and then put some economics behind it. And look, the plan is for that to come out at the end of this year. So, and remember to your listeners that, mostly in a feasibility study, there's a lot of upfront capital to be done. So from a robustness of this project, it'll be very robust because all the capital is sunk costs that's already there. So on a go-forward basis, and we also have those tax losses we picked up. So this will be a very, very robust, in a new in gold environment with new prices. I expect this to be a very, very robust project that it'll open up their eyes to this project and go, wow, this is a good project. And so the feasibility study, we're also trying to get on the ground this year and do some test mining, some trial mining. If you remember with this de-risking, there was a lot of uncertainty around the reconciliation that I talked about earlier. And another part of that de-risking is to do some trial mining, bulk sample, compare the models we have, the understanding to the actual mining, and really give that other level of confidence that this is what we said we would mine and this is what we got. So we're in the right track. And those two things will form a basis with the study, the trial mining as a restart plan. And so the restart plan is back half of 2025, a slow ramp up mining, back half of 2025, back into production. And, as we all believe gold will be in a much different environment then, that's a great time to be starting a mine. You get a lot of headwind as you're ramping up a mine into those sort of gold prices.
Absolutely, Shane. We'll wrap it up there, but that's an exciting path forward. I appreciate you giving us that update. And so we'll be looking for those economic studies come out later this year and interested to see how the trial mining goes. A lot on the go here with West Red Lake Gold Mine. So if people want to follow along with the news, definitely click on the link below this interview. It'll take you over to the company website, straight to their news section. Shane, it was great having you on the show again. As always, for an update, keep us posted. As more news comes out, we'll get you back on the show and looking forward to our next conversation.
Excellent. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.